Thanks for tuning in to the Minutemen Initiative today. We're going to be talking about active shootings and mass murdering, kind of a dark topic, but we're going to be getting into some practical solutions we can make, whether that be at the state level, community, or even individual level. Today we're joined by Andrew Register of Pride One Tactics. Very dear friend of mine. We were both in the military together, have a lot of experience together. Super close with this guy, and we're going to be sitting down with him to go over these things and really talk about how we can do things better, changes we can make, and overall just solutions that can help us stop these things from happening in the future.
Tonight, several people shot, and some of them we're told are dead at a medical clinic on the campus of St. Francis Hospital in Tulsa.
Tulsa police say the shooter is down, but there is a SWAT team there. The officials are working to clear the building floor by floor. Tulsa police captain saying that multiple people were wounded in this shooting at a medical building, and quote, some unfortunately were killed. This is happening inside the Natalie building there on Yale near 61st Street. That area completely shut down as they continue this response. And we have our crews headed to Tulsa right now, so stay with KOCO 5 as we continue to follow what was being called an active shooter situation.
So yeah, that's the most recent active shooter. That was June 2nd, correct? That
Yes.
was yesterday.
Yep, that just happened. We're recording this on the 3rd, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, it's really sad, and prayers and thoughts go out to the victims and the families and stuff like that. And that's kind of what we wanted to talk about today. We were actually getting ready to sit down and prep this podcast, and then we were kind of trying to get some information on some of these newest shootings and stuff, and then that one popped up. We're like, man, it's crazy.
And there's been quite a few, like since
Uvalde.
Yeah, since that one.
And there was one
spurred
before
on
it.
a bunch.
Yeah. And then week before, right, or a week or two before was the one in New York, correct?
Yeah. I can't remember when that one was, but yeah.
Yeah, I want to say it was like 2 weeks before Uvalde. But anyways, so pretty pretty sad, but I think it's pretty fair to say that this has become part of our reality now. And today we just wanted to come on here and talk about some practical solutions. What are some things that can be done? What are some ways that you as an individual can make a difference? And also just kind of break down some of the, I guess this will be a lot of our opinion, so take that for what it is. But a huge part of like what we talk about on here and what we stand for is the willingness to respond and the willingness to protect. And that should just be inherent. That should be something that you inherently do. If you're someone that is into this kind of stuff, if you are a regular listener or maybe you're joining us for the first time, if so, welcome. You're jumping in on kind of a sadder tone of a podcast, but we can't keep acting like that we can just wave a magic wand and get rid of evil. That's not how it works. We got to actually stand up and stand against it.
Yeah, and make your voice heard, because I can't tell you how many people, like just skip like going to school, like board meetings and things like that, things where you vote on like things that the school's going to do,
Yeah.
A lot of conservatives specifically, or whether they're blue collar or whatever, they work longer hours, so they're kind of like, yeah, I'd rather just not have to. I just want my freedoms, and I just want to do my own thing and not have to deal with anyone. But ultimately, like people making like ridiculous decisions within the schools, like all around the world right now, or all around our nation, are people that are actually willing to go in and make votes and say, hey, this is what I want our schools to do. This is why our schools have gotten so far off track, I think.
Yeah.
As a nation.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a lot of just going day to day, and as soon as something bad happens, people are up in arms about it, and it's like, what have you personally done to prevent things like this? Because it goes beyond, standing there with a gun, or it goes beyond, trying to remove all guns. It starts at those small levels, like what you're talking about, showing up to the meetings. Like if the school's going to vote on spending money on metal detectors, or if the school's going to vote on, hey, are we going to have a police officer on the presence, or are we going to hire armed security, things like that.
We're going to send our teachers to go get firearms training and allow them to carry firearms.
Yeah.
And
these are the things you need to be showing up, or at least voicing your opinion on, because, and that's things we're going to get into today. With us today, I want to welcome a very dear friend of mine, Mr. Andrew Register.
What's up, Jacob? What's up,
Welcome,
Steven?
welcome.
what's up, man?
He's up here from Texas, so you were actually just down there during the whole chaotic Uvalade thing. Mm-hmm. So where is that in relation to where you're at?
It's up north where I'm at.
Okay.
Down south north towards the Houston, greater Houston area, near it. But,
Okay. Yeah, so he's been having this, or he's had this vacation plan for a long time now, and but yeah, it was like a few days before you left that whole thing happened, and then he came up this way. But yeah, Andrew and I served in the Army together. We're both over in Afghanistan together, and so we know each other very well. So it's awesome to have him here. He's been doing some training with us and actually helping us. It's funny, he came on vacation to just like get put to work. He was like, I was like, hey, you want to come help us on the range, set up HESCOs? He's like, sure. And so we were out there setting up HESCOs and sweating. And
How was that? Was that bringing it back?
Oh man, that was awesome. Just in the heat, just shoveling dirt. It was
At least
great.
it's a little cooler than Afghanistan, I imagine.
Oh yeah.
we were just talking about that, though. It's like, I don't know how because when we were over there, we had like full armor on and
We were
setting
doing
those
that
things
stuff
up,
in there.
and we like had to carry them up a hill. You remember that one?
Oh yeah. We also tore them down the same day.
Yeah, because
Manpower and young stupidity is a powerful thing, dude.
it must have been. But because I was a much younger, dumber man, because I don't even remember it being hard. Like I looking back on that, I just remember doing it and being like,
I
this
do
is dumb.
remember becoming like 3 heat cats over there. But other than that, like,
No, dude, you've been a heat cat so many times.
oh yeah, dude, I just don't know when to just drink water.
And get out of the sun. It's so funny because I didn't really think about that, but like when we were out there in the hot sun, like any chance you got, you were like finding shade.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
like you
Absolutely.
were a vampire, dude. Oh man.
I'll sit right here by this tree.
So anyone who thinks Alaska's cold, we got a Texas boy that's trying to hide in the shade up here in the summer.
It's a different heat here, man. It's weird.
It's the angle of the sun. I just read an article about
Someone
that
just said
yesterday.
that
Yeah,
to
we were
us.
just talking about
It's
it.
because you get more coverage of sunlight on your whole body as opposed to directly above.
We literally just had a customer in here yesterday tell us that. So yeah, that's
And that's why the sun's always in your eyes here, which sucks.
oh.
That's why you're always squinting everywhere in the summertime.
I just try not to look at it.
That's a pretty good rule of thumb, I think. Like, just don't look at the sun if
Don't
you can
look
help
at
it.
the
Yeah. That's crazy. So that actually makes a lot of sense. So the sun's coming in at a more shallow angle, so it's hitting more of your body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's at like a
Because we're so
45
geographically.
degree instead of like a 70 degree.
All right.
So you're getting basically the heat of the sun on one half of your body at all times, whichever one's faced toward that, I guess.
And it's also like dry heat here. We have like no humidity.
Yeah,
So-
because if it's 70 degrees here, that's no wind, basically. In order for it to get that warm, there's like no wind out either.
When
yeah,
it's 70 degrees in Texas, it's about 100 degrees outside.
like just ambient temperature
Oh,
because
yeah,
of the humidity.
humidity.
But I
And
feel
just-
like you get that, like, it sucks because I mean, I hate humidity, but you get that like vapor layer that like shields you a little bit from the sun. I feel
as soon
like,
as you take that shower and then you go and experience that humidity, you have to take another shower.
yeah, yeah, dude. I don't miss humidity. I mean, we lived in North Carolina and Stephen for a lot longer than I did because you were down there, but in the old Vietnam. But
Yeah.
yeah, no fun. That's humid there too.
Yeah.
So anyways, we just want to start breaking down, some of this stuff, getting back into the topic of the podcast. We're just going to talk a little bit about, what's been going on. Obviously, if you watch the news, you know that there's been some shootings, and they're sad. But we just want to start talking about, like the current direction and the current mentality of, and I don't even know if it's the majority. The news makes it seem like it is, but from the perception of watching the news, it seems like the majority of everyone thinks that the best solution is to get rid of all guns. And so I just want to talk a little bit about, that fallacy and how that doesn't lead us anywhere, and it's not going to be any kind of...
If anything, it's going to be worse.
Well, I mean, you saw it already kind of play out in Uvalde. Is there was one bad guy with a gun inside of an area, and there was no other gun there, and look what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
And then the person that actually did stop the shooting wasn't even the police. So
Yeah, it was a guy getting a haircut.
it was a guy that had a gun.
Yeah. Was he actually getting a haircut before that?
He's a Border Patrol agent. He was getting a haircut, and his child goes to that school. His wife texted him pretty much stating everything, and pretty sure he just dipped out with that, curtain on him and just went in there and did God's work.
Yeah, dude. Dude, good for that guy. He took her round, too.
Mm-hmm.
Took her round right to the head, like it's a skim, basically, but that's what you got to do. And that's the whole point, is that,
It's called protecting and serving, and that's what our law enforcement agents are supposed to be doing.
Yeah. And I think more and more they're not, and that's not to disparage anyone in law enforcement, but if you are in law enforcement, you should be held to a higher standard, and you need to understand that. Like, if you choose to put on that badge, you choose to pick up that gun belt and put it on, you need to be ready to take care and protect, serve and protect, because that's what you're paid to do. And I think if you have a problem with that, then you need to find a different job, because that's the way that is. I mean, like I don't have any law enforcement experience, so I can't speak to that, but I do have military experience, and I can tell you right now that even being in a foreign country, how many times did we see like kids getting mistreated or anything like that, and we did not take it. We did not have it.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
oh, yeah. Multiple times, even with our AUP.
Yeah. Can't tell you how many people got backhanded for being an idiot over there and messing with kids or beating on their women or whatever. They didn't do it around us because they knew that we weren't about it and we were going to stop it. So that's the way it should be. And that's just a simple example, but this is like the ultimate, you've got somebody so disgusting and so messed up in the head that they're going to go in and start massacring innocent children. They should be killed at all costs.
In a way, we need to think about too, like, there were signs with that individual, he was cutting his face up with his own blades, saying that he enjoys this, people even knew about that in his school. Not one thing was said.
Yeah.
It's not just on, evil and then a good guy stopping evil. It's us as a community. It's us as a whole that need to understand, what's going on around us.
Yeah. And that's it. I mean, it goes back to what you were saying, Stephen. Like, it's more than just, I mean, I hate to say it, but we can't rely on law enforcement. It needs to start before that. There needs to be, people need to pay attention, and people need to speak up when something seems out of place. People need to, like, preventative measures are a big deal, and paying attention to behavior patterns and things like that. And I know some people may listen to that and be like, I don't know anything about that. It's like, well, then learn about it. There's so much information.
And it's not hard
to
tell when someone's acting strange or off or not mentally stable. I mean, it's pretty straight up in your face, especially in that situation. I mean, someone's cutting their face, I'd kind of be like, yeah, this dude's got some issues.
I mean, there was that, but there was also, multiple students in that area also was saying that he was driving around shooting people with BB guns. Not one thing was taking place. Not one. Shout out to law enforcement. Hey, this kid's doing this. Nothing.
Yeah, and and this is where it gets into a pretty gray area when you start. You'll have people that'll be like, well, that's why we need red flag laws and stuff like that. And it's like, well, no, because
anybody can say a red flag.
Yeah.
Anyone, you and I and the person that we don't know can bring up some type of red flag issue.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even have to be a real issue. It could just be a concern or an opinion,
Yeah. Well, it circumvents due process. Like we have to stick to our system that has worked for a long time. Yes, it has flaws, but as far as systems go, it's one of the better ones in the world. And there's a lot of corruption, and you can get in the weeds on that, but bottom line, I think overall it works pretty well. So I think adding laws that put people in prison or take people down for the possibility of something is not the answer. I think that should be done at the community level. Like, I think individually going up and confronting someone like that, or someone close to them, like if you have someone in your family that's struggling like this, like saying like, hey man, like, do you want to go talk to somebody? I'll go with you. Or don't worry about it, like I'll pay for you to go talk to somebody. Or do you just want to talk to me? Like, I think that's the solution. It's the community for that side of it, for the whole like mental health side, and the being aware of something that's wrong. And I don't know if this guy's family life was, and generally a lot of these people come from a lack of a support system. Like, a lot of them come from fatherless homes. If you actually look at what commonalities are exist between active shooters or mass murderers, is what I like to call them. If you actually look at what makes them all common, it's things like mental health is almost always one. They come from a fatherless home. There's all these things like that tend to create that person. So that may not work for everyone, but I think as far as having a good support system, they may not have it. But I think something that and I don't know, I don't know the actual way to create this culture, but if you're younger and you're still in school, or if you have kids that are in school, maybe talking to them and encouraging them to be kind to everyone. I think it sounds dumb, but it's like, that's such a simple thing. Like, being willing to just be like, this kid never gets talked to over here by anyone. Like, I'm just going to go hang out with him or her for a few hours or whatever, or
just like Steven
for lunch.
Was saying, there's definitely tells. You can definitely tell someone's not having a good day. There's definitely tells that you can go out and help people, things like that.
Yeah. And I think as a community, we need to be more willing to do that. Having compassion for people and empathy, and being willing to come alongside of them and just listen to people. That's usually what it is. People feel like no one's listening to them. They feel like they can't get their point across, so they go to this outlandish, evil solution to finally like be heard. That's why a lot of them write like a manifesto. It's, you will listen to me. I'm going to get your attention. And that's sad. The fact that they've gotten to the point where they're like, I have to kill a bunch of people to get someone's attention. Like, that's pretty crazy. And I know it's more than that, but a lot of it is that. It's as simple as they just want someone to listen to them. So, but on that, I mean, it's a whole can of worms. There's a lot of issues there. But I think the whole point that we're trying to lead up to is that, just in this short amount of time of us talking, we've uncovered like a ton of little things that could lead to something like this. Taking a tool away is not going to solve anything. And even before we get into the fact that like you can't get rid of them, I don't even want to get there yet. We'll get there in a second. But let's talk for a second about how or why it's such a fallacy to believe that if you ban or restrict or confiscate firearms, how that's not going to solve this issue at all.
It just makes good citizens follow those rules. I mean, the evil citizens, bad citizens, they've already chose not to. You have already talked about you're not going to get rid of them. How many times have we seen firearms unserialized? How many times have we had to deal with all this type of stuff? It's like, why do you even have this? How can you have this? This things happens. Guns are, what do they say in I can't remember that book, but in America there would be a gun or a barrel behind every blade of grass.
Yeah.
Like that's how it is. Like
That was one of the Japanese generals that said that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also
In
in
World War II.
this Texas shooting, the case proven, like everyone goes back to the guy who was a federal or a border patrol guy, and that he has a gun for his job, but clearly he was off duty if he was getting a haircut. That could have been some random guy who was just a prepared, citizen that had his concealed carry, and his wife texted him and said, "Hey, there's a mass shooting happening, and you just happen to be right down the road." And we've seen that before. That happened in that church shooting down in Texas. Was that Texas? It's a few years back now, where the guy just responded.
I think that
and
was
had-
Texas.
that was Texas. Yeah, it
Yes.
was immediate.
Yeah, and
There's
you know,
two of them in there that
and
had
it-
firearms drawn on that.
and it just goes to show, like, the law enforcement isn't like, yeah, they're there to help and serve and protect, but ultimately, like, you shouldn't rely on them, because this dude did it on his own without the law enforcement, because law enforcement sucked in this situation and
Yeah, which
took
we'll,
their sweet
Law
time.
enforcement was in a way stopping people going in.
which we'll talk about that in a second. I want to hold off on that, but because that'll get us fired up real quick. We'll get to that, but no, and
But I'm just saying, like, that's a case proven, like, why you should keep firearms in people's hands that are good people.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
because ultimately, the only way to stop violence is good people with violence. Bad violence is good people with violence. So,
yeah,
and I firmly believe it, and it was put on display for this shooting. Unfortunately, there was 21 deaths, 19 children, 2 teachers in this one, but it could have been way worse if it wasn't for him.
yeah, it could have been, and it shouldn't have been that bad.
No, it
And-
shouldn't have.
And we'll get into that, but I don't want there to be a misunderstanding. We're not saying you don't need police. Steven's saying you shouldn't rely on them. There's a big difference. We do need police. To keep our community safe. It's part of our infrastructure. As a modern society, I think law enforcement's good. Like, all this defund the police crap is a complete overcorrection, and it's
Should be putting
completely
more
stupid.
funding into police.
Yeah. But you as an individual, you as a citizen, should not expect or rely on the police to come to your aid, because it's just not realistic. The time is usually way too long. Like, the data supports that. You look at the FBI crime statistics and homicide statistics and stuff like that, which I encourage you to look. It's very, if you're ever wanting like more information, the FBI keeps very thorough statistics. It's a freaking,
It's open records.
you gotta get a comb out and get ready to go through it, because it's a lot of information. But you look at that stuff and you start to see the trends of someone called for help, they got killed. Someone called for help, they got killed, because it just takes too long in most cases. Now, not always, and yes, they need to get there, but you need to buy the time. You need to buy the time. You need to be able to defend yourself, or defend others until professional help gets there. It's very similar to like the whole concept of first aid. We talk about it with first aid a lot. It's like, you should have the skills to keep yourself or keep others alive until professional help gets there. You're not trying to, perform open heart surgery. You're just keeping them alive. You're keeping blood in the body. You're keeping them breathing, keeping brain function if you can. You're doing your best to keep them stable and alive. And then professional help gets there, and they do what they do best. They do what they're trying to do. Very similar to this. You need to keep people alive. You need to stop the threat, or do your best to keep the threat at bay until professional help gets there. And professional help getting there, especially in a situation where you're dealing with like an active shooter, it's going to take time. They're going to have to spool up and respond,
they got all sorts of procedures as far as like dealing with that. They're not just going to go, and that, I don't know what happened with Texas, but I assume there was some sort of SOP behind why they didn't go in. They had to wait for a certain amount of numbers or something dumb.
which
but-
I don't care what it was.
No,
Um,
I know. I'm not giving
I
them
know.
an excuse. I'm just
I know you're
saying
not.
police have policies and procedures where you as a civilian doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of do. You got some sort of law you have to abide by, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
like,
In those situations, when you go protect little ones, though, anyone should have been able to walk through that door.
I agree. And I don't know. this all goes back to, you know, if you are a person, I just want to reiterate this. If you are a person that's practicing, you're preparing, you're investing in gear, you're going out and training, you carry daily, you know, you're doing all these things. This mentality to be willing to stand in the face of danger and stand between evil and innocence should be, you need to ask yourself, like, am I willing to do this? I truly believe that if you're someone that's preparing in this way and you listen to podcasts like this and, you know, you're kind of immersing yourself in this world, this should be something that you come to terms with. I remember before I went to Afghanistan, I really sat down. This is before we left, but I sat down and thought, like, I had that moment of like, you know, I could straight up get killed over there, and
Absolutely.
I could lose buddies, you know, and unfortunately we did lose some. But I had that inner kind of talk with myself where I was like, all right, this is something that could happen and likely will, and I have to come to terms with that. Am I okay with it? And it sounds weird because it's not like I really had a choice if I could go or not, you know, but I was like, I have to be okay
mental
with this.
choice, you know.
Yeah.
It's that mental breakthrough that you have.
Yep.
You know?
And I was like, I signed up for this. I thought back to like what made me sign up. The things that I saw as a kid, you know, like 9/11 played a big role into it, for me at least. Just seeing like things that I was like, how can evil be allowed to get away with things like this? And so, you know, at a young age, and, you know, some people would say that it was naive or whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is I decided to be one of those people that was going to go wherever I was called to go and stand, you know, and it wasn't even really about like the country. I mean, it was like, I'm proud of our nation and stuff, and I'm proud to have served, but it wasn't about that for me. It was about, no, I think that if you're, excuse me, I think if you're evil, you should be stopped. And I want to do my part to stop that. Mm-hmm. And that was like a big, people have asked a lot, like we got asked all the time while we were in, why did you join? You know, and you always give this like jumbled answer, but ever since I've been out, I've really sat down and thought about it. I'm like, man, like, and thought back to when I was a kid and the things I saw and like, what was the driving force? It was that. It was, you know, I would see things that would make me so mad. Like, how is that allowed to happen? How does this happen in the world? And how's no one stopping that? And that was it. That was a big thing for me. But when it came down to like getting ready to deploy, I had to sit down and be like, man, I might have to take lives. You know, I'm going to see lives get taken. My life could be taken. I'm going to leave a wife behind, you know. So these are all things I had to think about. And once you come to terms with it, you kind of find your lines, and you're like, you know, protecting innocent people and protecting ultimately your family and your community back home or whatever the case may be. I think it's worth it. I really do. And
that's how heroes become heroes.
What's that?
That's how heroes become heroes after they went through that mental breakthrough to go save someone or to go stop something or to stop the evil, to stop the threat without, you know, without thinking that they might be in it too. You know, that's what makes that hero happen.
Yeah, it's the willingness to act, you know, and the willingness to, it's selflessness. It's like, it's ultimate selflessness because you're willing to sacrifice yourself for others. And I think if you're someone that carries daily and, you know, you do these things, obviously figure out what your lines are, but are you willing to do that for just your family? Are you willing to do that for another person's innocent family? Like, where is the line? But I think you should sit down and have this conversation with yourself. Books that are really good that I read before deployment, and I need to read them again, it's been a long time, is On Combat and On Killing.
Oh, absolutely awesome books.
Those are great books, and I recommend them, especially for getting into starting to break down mentally where you are and how you want to be. So, yeah, and that's something that, I don't know. I think we probably in some ways all three had, because we all three served. So with all three of us had probably had to have a reason similar to that to join, I think. So,
Yeah.
And that's not to say that if you didn't serve, or I'm not going down that road at all. That's just my experience. So that's kind of how I relate to that. But,
well, yeah, and a lot of people at 18 hadn't written a will like in preparation for death. So
yeah,
like, I mean, it just got. I think if you served, you just got like had that realism hit you in the face a whole lot faster. Because it's like, oh man, I'm actually like writing a will for myself right now, and
yeah,
I'm only 18 years old, or 19 years old, or 20 years old, however old it was. So
yeah, you're confronted with fatality or mortality. Sorry, fatality. You're confronted with mortality very early when you're in the military. That's something that's just brought up. You learn to joke about it. You learn to that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, I mean that's a good point. And military or not, if you're someone that's choosing to strap on that gun every day for your own protection, that's usually where it starts. This is to protect myself or my family. That's generally where I think it kind of starts. But you need to start looking at beyond that. Like, would I be willing to run in there? Would I be willing to deck that cop in the face and push him down if he's trying to stop me and get in there? I'll tell you right now, if my kids are in there, it's happening.
Oh, yeah.
I don't care what's going on. Like, you better be quick to that taser because it's happening.
Even then.
And honestly, the more I think about it, even if it wasn't my kids, because I start to think about, what if it was my kids and I'm one of these people that's getting physically stopped over here because I'm trying to run in, and I get it. I understand perimeters and stuff like that,
also,
yes.
like, they're worried about potential other active shooters. Like, they don't want like multiple active shooters within the school as well. So they don't know people's background that's going in, what their intentions are, things like that. So, I mean, there's a little bit more at play than like
for sure.
You just like looking at it like, oh yeah, they did trash job. Yeah, they should have just gone in. They probably should have sent in like a SWAT team right out the gate just to go in and take it out as soon as possible. But that's not as, I don't think it's easy to.
I mean, if which I mean, we're already kind of talking about it. So what we keep kind of referring to is the fact that law enforcement took
over 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Over 40 minutes.
Confirmed around 40 minutes. We've been hearing unofficially that it was closer to an hour, I guess, before there was any interdiction. There's any physical response into the building.
And it wasn't even them.
And this is Uvalade. This is specifically talking about Uvalade. Not only that, but there was a massive law enforcement presence outside of the school. Lots of parents are and witnesses have come forward and are saying that they could hear gunshots happening inside the building while they were being held outside. So
yeah, it's crazy.
Basically, law enforcement set up a perimeter, which you should do, absolutely. But that's tactics 101. You make a defensive perimeter, but I would have. I mean, it's crazy to me that it took that long for any kind of response to actually happen. So long that Border Patrol agent basically
was able to actually be the one who stopped it.
Yeah. Did he go in solo?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Dang. See, and that's it. Someone with the willingness to act was like, dude, screw you, I'm going in. And it probably helped that he had a law enforcement experience. I'm sure like the cops, I'm guessing, let him in. I don't know. But I don't know if he just was like geared up and he was like, get out of my way. I mean, which I don't know. But yeah, that's what we kept referring to. And that is just, in my opinion, it's there's no excuse for it. I think it's a failure. I think it's an utter failure of the local law enforcement.
Is it pretty remote there, Andrew?
Yeah, it's actually right outside San Antonio. San Antonio is pretty large. San Antonio's it's pretty nice and everything.
How far of a drive from San Antonio do you know?
Oh, I'm not too sure. It's but I know it's like right near it. Usually if you're going to talk about that place, you'll just say near San Antonio.
So more than likely there was should have been plenty of law enforcement that could have responded to.
Oh, absolutely. And I know you were talking about the defensive perimeter. you know, in my head, I think there should be some type of SOP when that type of life is, you know, that type of evil is going on, that there should just be a team that goes in. I can't remember the video that we were watching or the gentleman that was on it, but he was stating the fact that all it was if they were to go in, you know, it would have taken the attention away.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, and I believe that, you know, like someone doing evil isn't going to worry, is going to worry about them being stopped, you know? So the fact that no one did anything, he was just able to just continue, you know? And I think that should be, in a way, changed.
For sure.
That definitely, I mean, it's going to be, yeah. If I was a police officer on that, you know, in that, whatever it was, like if it's city or whatever the police were that were there, I mean, you know that they're going to have regrets, and at least, I mean, I would, but yeah, like just, it's crazy that they didn't, I can't believe that someone in that group didn't just say, I'm going in because this is ridiculous.
All it takes is maybe 4 people, you know, one person, as you could see, the Border Patrol agent that actually stopped it. But if you had just an actual team of dudes that just went in there, that shooter would have realized that he would have had to defend himself against them instead of just going free reins on anyone else, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, since we're kind of already in this territory, let's start to talk about, like, what are some preparedness? What are some ways schools or we as a community can be better prepared for this new reality we're in? And I shouldn't even say new. This has been, you know, since the early, or I guess, kind of early 2000s, you know, active shootings have really started to become more and more. I just saw a report that said that in 2021, they went up 52% since before. So they're happening half again more than they were, you know,
and
previously.
I think they've been happening this whole time. I think, you know, unfortunately, elections start coming around and media start playing the political game of what they're going to put on the news and what they're not going to put on the news, and
right,
which is unfortunate. I mean, regardless to say, people are getting killed in schools or in, you know, places of gathering. So I think ultimately, like I said earlier, you know, going to board meetings, making votes on, you know, you talked about metal detectors, or you talked about sending teachers to get firearms training, or having security within schools, making them harder targets. It's going to, for one, you know, if you got some kid that's planning on coming in and shooting up a school, or an adult trying to shoot up a school, they're going to see that, and it's going to be like, I don't know if I want to try this one, because I'm gonna have a less likely chance of having a dent, or I'm just gonna get stopped right away.
Yeah,
you know, and it's just it's like locking the door to your house. You know, someone that comes up to a door and it's unlocked, they're gonna be more likely to steal from that house than one that's locked. You know, because
for sure, yeah,
or one that has cameras, or one that has lighting, or one that has, you know,
you're taking the path of least resistance,
making a hard target. People are gonna be less likely to steal from you.
Yeah.
Like, I've never been stolen from since I've had my Tacoma, but back when I had my Jeep Wrangler, I had stuff stolen from me because I couldn't lock it.
Yeah.
So it's like case in point.
Except for your light bar.
Yeah, but that was on the outside of my vehicle, so
that's such
crackheads, you know.
Literally 2 weeks after you got it.
Yeah.
That's so sad. It was a nice light bar. It was like one of the rigid light bars, you know.
No.
Yeah, I think it was like a $1,200 light bar or something stupid.
Well, that's why they took it.
Yeah,
yeah.
They got some.
They had to go get that meth,
drug
dude.
money.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like, you know, I kind of want to. I kind of want to stay in this area of law enforcement for a little bit and talk about, like, because this is something that's happening more and more. Every single town, county, city law enforcement needs to take the time to communicate with schools. They need to develop, which they have. I'm not saying this hasn't happened. This has happened in many cases. And actually, ironically, Uvalde just did an active shooting training with the local law enforcement like a month prior to this, which it's interesting because it's like, was that used? Like, what happened with that?
They had done a what? Sorry.
They actually did an active shooter training.
It's like a 6-month long thing.
Was it that long?
I thought I could have sworn something about it. It was like a 6-month like program.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but they're working with staff. They did some drills with students, but which is good. I mean, obviously it didn't seem to do much in this case, but this needs to be thought about. We have the solutions, we have the resources, we have the data to figure this stuff out as a society, as a nation, I should say. This is stuff that's made readily available to us. We need to start getting together as a community and figuring out, like, hey, and law enforcement needs to work closely with schools and develop, response SOPs. Response time, I think, needs to be greatly diminished. It needs to be, or I guess that's the wrong way to say it. Response time needs to be increased. The response time should be much faster than it is now. There shouldn't be a focus on, like, let's treat it like a hostage situation.
Well, how quick were they on scene? Because, yeah, they sat on their perimeter for an hour. That's trash. We've already gone through that. But
yeah, I don't know.
I mean, if they're on scene pretty quick. I mean, from my experience, at least, every time I've had to, like, activate EMS or law enforcement or whatever in my time, it's always been pretty quick. Like, and we live in a town where everything's pretty spread out. So,
yeah.
I think response time is actually pretty decent, and that goes back to the fact that we shouldn't be relying on law enforcement because there is going to be a delay of some sort. They don't know to come until 911's called, so there's that delay of, like, hey, you got to actually get them on the phone, otherwise you're just wasting time. And then obviously they got to travel from wherever they're coming from to get there, so you're going to have delay. So I mean, yeah, that's why you shouldn't rely on them.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure it was pretty fast. I'm sure they got there within a few minutes, I would guess.
Yeah.
But response time to me is confronting threat.
Yeah.
The time between being called and confronting the threat. And I know, it's not like we're it's blowing smoke here. Like, we understand we've done this kind of stuff professionally. We all three of us understand tactics. We understand you can't just go rushing into a building with threats. Like, there's things like that.
But it's also,
I understand.
You're in America and you're also dealing with a school.
Yeah.
So it's actually easier than being in Afghanistan or Iraq.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
So tactically, it's not like you're worried about threats from the outside. Or you shouldn't. I mean, not too much, at least.
And I think it's anecdotal.
Percentage would be, like, so low that...
Yeah. There have been coordinated active or mass murderings. Like, there was that one that happened in the church where back in, I think it was 2010. Remember that big church that it happened in, and someone went in and started shooting, and then when police responded, another person came in. I think that's only happened like one time. There may have been, and don't take my word for it. Look it up. This stuff's all readily available.
Yeah, but I mean, as a law enforcement agent, if I end up getting ambushed and killed, it's like, well,
but you signed up for
I
that.
still did the best I could do, at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I for that, but
you did though. But you did. I mean,
you signed up for that exact moment.
I'm just waiting until that ambush happens.
I mean, it's the whole. It goes down to the protect and serve thing. It's what you're supposed to do. You are supposed to protect. You are supposed to serve, especially if there's little ones involved. I mean, it goes to a different, like, category of protect and serve to my eyes. And I don't even have the little ones, so I know how y'all probably feel about this. But I mean, if we were all there, I'm going in first because y'all have little ones, and y'all can come in behind me, it's stuff like that. And that's how I see it, like, with y'all, and my people.
Yeah, no, and that's...
And I think where you were trying to get at is, we're not saying to defund the police. I think the police need more training, if anything. I think this particular example kind of breaks down where there's some shortcomings from the law enforcement perspective. Like, I feel like, I mean, yeah, they had that active shooter training, but I mean, let's be real. I mean, I don't want to hate on, like, law enforcement training,
dude, let's just go, dude.
I mean,
because people, okay.
You can only do
what
so
I was
much with
trying to lead
PowerPoints.
up to is that there's going to be some tough love here. Like, there's some really, like, I've got a lot of buddies that are law enforcement. A lot of guys we train with work in kind of the law enforcement field and stuff. And they're solid dudes, and there's solid dudes out there, but there's also some turd bags out there. And then I mean, it just is what it is. Training standards for law enforcement just are not anywhere near where they should be.
Yeah, and also like law enforcement's so scared to go outside of their own department to get training.
Yeah.
Which is annoying. It's like, why would you train within your own department? You're not getting any better.
One of my biggest issues on this, in being in this industry, especially what we're all in, is I see law enforcement have to come in daily to train. And some of these guys have never shot their gun until last year for their qual. Working on the ranges and stuff like that, and being an instructor and seeing law enforcement come in and you should be better than me. Why is it that you're missing your targets at 7 yards? Why is it that there's a hole on the right side of the target and not in the center of the target when I'm out there instructing and for Texas Gun Club and you seeing like these guys that come in, well, when's the last time you shot your gun? It was last year.
Yeah.
It's like, so you shot it for the qual last year, because they do qual once a year. They qual on their birthday months. And you have to get that done. And to see like law enforcement officers, and they openly will tell me, oh, I haven't shot since last year. And it's just like, well, what are you doing? Like you should be better than me. Like, if you're carrying that firearm. Like, and then what you were saying too, it's, I'm a cop. I don't need your help. It's, I can get it from this guy.
Well, yeah, and it's awesome that they're actually using you as an instructor, because, like there's so many good people. Like, I think of like Centrifuge Training Center. Like those guys do great law enforcement training, and they'll travel too. Like, I mean, they've been up to Anchorage, I think, right? And done APD.
Yeah.
And
just troopers.
So I mean, there's a bunch of guys that are willing to go out, and they're going to give you solid training, and it's not going to be from the 80s or 90s or even early 2000s. It's going to be, the most recent data that people have come up with, or just techniques that we've learned over the last, the firearms industry. We've always said it's come such a long way since the beginning of when 9/11 happened to when we've just pulled out of Afghanistan. That time period, which is right around 20 years, we learned so much about shooting in general. Whether it's just from firefights, gunfights, things like that. There's been a lot of active shooting since then. So like from our domestic wise, we've learned a lot during that time period. We've just learned
just down to marksmanship.
Down to marksmanship. From competition shooting has taken off leaps and bounds during that time period. Just a ton of good information and data has come out from the last 20 years.
Yeah, and just to take it a step further, and this is kind of piggybacking what you were just saying, law enforcement if you're in law enforcement, you need to start coming to terms with the fact that, like, go back to the why. Why did you pick that job? Why are you doing what you're doing? I would assume, it's not going to be true for everyone, but I would assume it had something to do with protecting people and helping your community. I think that's, if you ask, I've asked a few guys, like, hey, why are you in law enforcement? And that's usually somewhere in their answer. And if that's the case for you, then you need to come to terms with the fact that your training that you're getting in your department, it's not enough. It isn't enough. And it's not going to be, because unfortunately your department doesn't have the money for it. And that's the sad reality of a lot of this. And people get really mad about law enforcement and stuff like that. And it's like, well, it's not entirely the individual officer's fault as far as like the training they're getting. Now they need to take more of a responsibility and go seek out more training. I believe. That's just, if you do that job, you should be, I personally think you should be doing things like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think you should be practicing with your firearm like regularly. Most departments give like a training budget too, like with, you get free ammo and things like that. It's not very much, but use that and, make it a part of your ritual, your training rotation. Things like that you should be working on. You should be learning de-escalation techniques. There's a lot of these things. I think it's very important to go outside of just being to whatever your department provides. And I think I think that's just on the individual. Now, going back to the department itself, that all comes down to what budgets they're allotted by the city, county, whatever it is. And going back to what you said, Stephen, at the beginning about voting and things like that, people get frustrated about law enforcement. Why aren't they more trained? They should be, especially when you start talking about race and stuff like that. It's like, well, why aren't they taught about culture, and why aren't they, because they don't have the money for it. Those departments in most cases don't have the money for it because you voted to fund some other weird thing. You, the civilian, the citizen, you went to the town hall and you were like, we need to make colleges free or whatever it was, and I don't want to get on any of those other issues, but you went and you screamed about something else. Well, that money has to come from somewhere in a lot of cases, and usually it comes from
your community.
It comes from law enforcement. It comes from the fire department. It comes from things like that, And if you want, and I'm not saying that they need to have just like tons of money and, we could go down the rabbit hole for an eternity on how terrible some of our local municipalities and governments
like
are at managing money.
Fund with.
Yeah.
And even departments, what they decide to use the money for.
It's there's issues there, of course. But it starts with you going down to the city hall, going down to the local police department and demanding, asking, this is public. They will tell you. You can go to the, a lot of people are scared to go to the police station. You can go there and say, I want to see what my tax dollars pay for. They're probably going to have to schedule a time for you to come in, but they will lead you around. They will show you that's where you can go, and you can start making a conversation with people. They'll probably be annoyed by you, but too bad. They work for you. So go down there. And I need to do this. I've never done it on my local law enforcement here. So I've done it with the fire department and stuff, mainly just for my kids, but it was they break down, this is how this works. This is this, we got this many people. They start telling you all this stuff because they do those things to give for public information, So you need to get involved. This is why we talk about it all the time. Local politics are so important, and it's little tiny things like this is why they are. It's also why voting for certain people that understand the importance of this kind of training and the funding to support this kind of training is extremely important. So going beyond just shooting, like what you were talking about, Andrew, I think there needs to be a complete redesign. I don't want to say universal. I don't really like universal training stuff because I think it just turns into a check the box. But I think there needs to be some kind of template that's designed preferably by a third party, someone like Centrifuge.
Yeah.
Not saying them, but someone like that. Their training has become like an FBI standard.
Yeah.
Like their vehicle interdiction and all that, like shooting and engagements around vehicles, because they're a private company that's collected data, and they're awesome at it. They've proven that they're one of the leading companies. They're completely private, which is fantastic, and it should be, because we're a capitalist country. You're going to have people that are doing it for the right reasons. It's not just going to be, we got to fit this into the budget. No, it's going to be what it is, and then it's going to be up to different departments and organizations to decide if they want to pay for that service, But someone like that, and this is just my opinion, but someone like that preferably should sit down, look at the data, start working with different organizations, and design a system, design a template that departments can then take and tailor to what they want to do, tailor to how they would respond, what their SOPs are, how big their schools are, how many people they would need, things like that. So going back to response times, there's a lot of stuff that needs to take place prior to responding to increase those times, to make those times better. And again, I'm talking about from getting the call to stopping the threat. That response time needs to be improved greatly. And, going back to talking about perimeters and stuff, I brought that whole thing up to say, we understand the tactics of it all. We're not just like some bozos that don't understand the importance of having security and things like that. But you can't sit outside of a school while gunshots are ringing out and children are dying for 40 plus freaking minutes. It just doesn't, it's inexcusable. It doesn't work. You should have band up. I know for a fact if the three of us were there, and I would have started looking around and being like,
why is no one moving?
Let's go. Like, I've got my Glock 17. Like, yeah, that's all I've got. But let's
That's more than enough.
press check. I'm golden. Let's go. Let's rock and roll. Are you with me? Yep. You know, okay. Because that's just crazy to me. And yeah, they were following orders, and I keep seeing all this stuff. Well, we need to stop making excuses for stuff like this. And yeah, it wasn't, you know, I don't want to put all the blame on that. Obviously, the blame is on I think it was on the community as a whole. I mean, there's stuff that's come out about he was on some kind of watch list or something. This guy that went and did this, I don't even want to say his name. We're not going to. Nope. But this guy that went and did this was on some kind of list. He got flagged on a list. Apparently that did no good. You know, so there's a lot of things that need to get fixed as far as a preparedness aspect goes. Anything else on that before we kind of push into some other preparedness things?
We're talking about hard targets.
So, yeah, I mean, yeah, we can talk about that. Creating you kind of brought that up earlier or just a little bit ago about how,
yeah, the other thing I was going to bring up, kind of since we were talking about law enforcement as well, is like if your school is going to go out of their way to have a, you know, like some like a police officer in the building. Like,
yeah,
actually, because I know some schools.
What do they call them?
Resource officers?
Yeah, resource.
That also shouldn't be some police officer that you're just trying to hide from the, you know, from the world. You know,
I'm glad you
know what I mean? Because
yeah.
I just feel like it's always the peon, you know, like that they throw in those positions. Like, yeah, you're going to be this guy because
kind of the Paul
we're kind
Blart.
of trying to hide you from the streets, you know, like we're going to keep you off the road because you're kind of a liability. So we're going to put you in the school where you can monitor, and it's a less likely situation. That dude should be someone that's pretty well trained because he's going to ultimately potentially be the guy that can stop that very, very, very quickly. If that's his purpose to be there, is, you know.
Why not make it a shift? Why not make that a shift?
I guarantee it would be a shift. I don't think it's the same guy. You got to have time off.
Oh.
I would think. I don't know, though.
I just figured they'd be there like school hours and then
that's it.
So I know that as soon as I get back home about a week, me and my buddy, we're already starting the process of becoming school resource officers. We're going to attempt to go all in with this. You know, we're going to start with a school in May Creek, and we're going to use its ROTC and faculty to get students and teachers involved with outsourced instructors, with law enforcement. We're going to try to do this as a team. You know, and you know that's our goal for when we get back. You know, it's got to stop. Something's got to change. You know, and only way to do that is to actually immerse yourself inside that world.
Yeah, and try.
Yep.
Just try. Yeah, that's a big thing that we're gonna start trying to do as well. I mean, my focus is a little more on the, like the training side of it, getting people trained. I think the getting trauma kits like in schools, you know, that's something that's just it's a no-brainer. The fact that schools still have an OSHA qualified little first aid kit with Band-Aids and ACE wrap and ibuprofen in it is just ridiculous. Mm-hmm. It's ridiculous. I mean, you know, the mentality is, well, we can call the ambulance. Like, no, sometimes you can't, because guess what? EMS ain't going in there. If you have an active shooter situation, EMS isn't going in until
they can't go in there until law
secured.
Enforcement says so.
Yep. So anyways, yeah, so things like, you know, having resource officers, or, you know, I mean, even beyond that, you know, kind of in line with what you were saying, like, I don't know how I think resource officers are different.
It's more of the training side of it. It's not the actual, like.
Oh, you were saying you want to get involved in training them.
Involved with, you know, setting up the SOPs for schools and having officers there, having guards there, having faculty, you know, being trained with, you know, not just having an LTC or anything like that, but an actual, you know, qualification every couple of, you know, quarters or something like that. It's more than just having some guy walk around with a little badge in school saying that he's a school resource officer. It's got to be immersive. It's got to be involved, and it's got to be daily. It's got to be something that people are understanding that this is happening. You know, these aren't just going to be something that we do every 6 months, every year. You know, it's going to be a constantly changing. We talk about the evolution of firearms and how daily something new comes out, which is changing some other type of tactic. You know, if you settle for that tactic, you know, next thing you know, you're going to be running doctrine from the 70s. You know,
Yeah.
you have to evolve with this. You can't settle. You can't stay the same. And if this is how we're evolving, then we need to counteract that. You know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No. And I mean, you're hitting the nail, man. Like that's it. I mean, that's how you get involved. I mean, we're all in this industry, so we have a little more of like I guess a window into it, but you don't have to be. I think, you know, going back to the, you know, showing up at the city hall meetings and stuff like that. I mean, things like that can make a big difference. You know, I guess starting to get into more of the preparedness stuff. I mean, you start talking about hard targets. It's weird to me that, you know, our banks are more secured than our schools are. That's one that a lot of people have said that, but it is weird. Like I've heard people say that, and I'm like, yeah, that's strange. Like if you ran into a bank with a gun, that response time's super fast, and you know, there's all this. It's hard to do. Like there's cameras everywhere. Everything's locked.
They got their emergency buttons that they can hit that will.
Yep.
You know.
There's controlled. They can, you know, lock down parts of the bank with just pushing buttons. You know.
Yeah.
And usually there's like some kind of security control room that's separate from the rest of that can't be accessed, you know, that people can, you know, do whatever they need to.
We're talking about money. Like this is security for money.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, children are priceless, so.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. Like why are we so, I mean, it's like, and I think it's true. I think our society values money over life, you know, and it's a sad thing. And I think that needs to change. I mean, there needs to be a culture change. We need to go back to, you know, you hear the phrase a lot, like, oh, the good old days, you know, and stuff like that. And I don't think it's necessarily true all the time, but there is something to be said about the value of life several decades ago was much higher than it is now. I believe. So, I mean, even just, I remember in the 90s, you know, the value of like life and innocence and things like that were a lot higher than it is now, you know. So there's definitely been a degrading of our society and into immorality, and the value of life is diminished greatly, and that's a big reason why this stuff's happening. You know, the value of life's not there, and it's sad. And you know, valuing materials and money and things like that is definitely the priority over life. And so that's something that needs to change. But what do banks have? Banks have things like locked doors, armed guards, you know, security cameras, like you said, the silent alarms. And also banks have, in most cases, direct action SOP that's drilled with local law enforcement. Like you actually start looking into it, and most departments have like an SOP in place for bank robbery, and it's like something that they drill, and it's something that's in place, especially in bigger cities and things like that. We need it for schools. It's just like all these things. Like some schools do, like you see schools in the inner
I think
cities.
some schools do have it.
Yeah.
But that's a much more prepared school than a lot of others. So
Yeah, and I doubt very many active shootings happen there.
I know, right?
I don't know what the statistics would be on that, but I you know, people always say, well, what's your solution? To me, the clear solution is put armed security in schools.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bang. I mean, that's literally bang.
But more than just, you know, here's your gun. It's got to be you're qualing. You know, you're gonna have to
highly
you're
trained.
gonna have to show, you know, marksmanship, you know, abilities. You're gonna have to show, you know, that you know how to manipulate a firearm and you understand the mechanics of not just the firearm, but the school itself. You know, what's the flow of traffic? What's, you know, it should be like the back of your hand. You know, like how can someone do this, and what's the best spot for you? You don't just sit at the front door. It's other things too.
Yeah,
you know?
literally patrolling the school.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I mean, and I see it all the time. Like I've been reading, you know, conversations and comment debates, which like YouTube comment debates are just ridiculous. Like they don't solve anything, but you just read through it. I like to read through some of that just to get people's general thoughts on things. And a lot of it is like, well, that's just introducing more guns into the school. Like that's gonna be a problem.
There's already guns. There's guns. There's going to be guns regardless of where you're at. You're welcome to America. You know, like this is just who we are. We're gonna have it.
Yeah.
Right? So taking it away or getting it away from, you know, these types of areas is only making it easier for these, you know, evil people.
Yeah.
You know,
like it or not, that it's a part of our culture. Yeah. Guns are a part of this nation. They have been since the start. Conception. People always compare us to Australia. Well, you could do what Australia did. No, you can't. Do you realize that for the last 34 months, every single one of those months, over 1 million firearms were sold? So that's 34 consecutive months. This last month was a new record, and it continues to get more. Over 1 million firearms were sold. So I don't care if you're pro-gun or anti-gun.
It's happening.
There's no logistical way to get rid of all the guns. That's 34 million guns just in the last few months. 34 months. That's on top of the 500 million guns that are already estimated, and that's known of guns. That's not taking into consideration black market guns, which is extremely high. Like, I don't think people realize the gun smuggling, the illegal gun smuggling stuff that happens rivals drug smuggling in some cases. Like, it's a ton because there's a huge market for it here. Like, gangs aren't going down to your local,
gun shops,
Dick's Sporting Goods and buying guns. They're getting them. They're getting them just like they get, drugs and all that other stuff. They're getting them through black market ways and, alley dealing and stuff like that. I mean, that's
just. I was going to say most of them are felons, so they're not going to be able to get a gun legally. So
yeah. And that's that whole point. You're dealing with people that are already willing to break the law. If you're dealing with someone that's like, I want to murder a bunch of people, they're not going to give a crap about any gun law.
30-6, that is, or the 30-06, penal code of not having a firearm on the premises. They don't care. They don't care about that piece of plastic.
They're about to murder people. They don't care about a sign. Oh,
well, I guess I can't.
Oh, it's got a red cross through the gun. I guess I can't take this in here. Like, that's ridiculous. And the fact that that's where we're at is just, that's our solution. It just proves that there's an agenda here. It has nothing to do with keeping our children safe at all.
I was going to say, if anything, it's doing the opposite by doing that, because
yeah, it's making it easier.
You're just making it harder for people that actually would be willing to stop the threat and not be able to have a firearm on the premises.
So yeah, I mean, I think, again, the best solution, like it or not, guns are here. They're here to stay. They're not going anywhere, and they shouldn't. I mean, guns are still, as of right now, they're the best tool we have against. It's a force equalizer.
Mm-hmm.
You can be a super small woman that has no physical strength, and you could have a giant man trying to do harm to you, and that's going to level the playing field. Or, in this case, you could be an idiot that's trying to shoot up a school with an AR-15 or whatever, and then you could have an AR-15 and smoke that guy. And that's
before it even happens.
Yep, before it even happens, or while it's happening in the case of Uvalade. But yeah, I mean, even just look. What about the shooting that just happened in Charleston, West Virginia? Right? Is that where it was?
It was the day after.
Yep, the day after. Oh yeah,
after, and a lady stopped what would have been a mass shooting. Who an individual fired with an AR-15 inside it was a graduation party and birthday party with the little ones and stuff like that. And, a mother pulled her handgun, her LTC handgun that she had, and smoked that individual. Stopped the evil before the evil happened. I think he fired a couple of shots and hit no one. And then before he was able to actually line up those sights and actually understand, with all that, he was already taken out.
Yeah,
by an individual who was good, with a firearm.
And did you see that on the news?
No, not at all.
In fact, I had to dig to look up the details on it. I had to dig for a while. Like, we were waiting to start the podcast, and I was scrolling around trying to find it. So, I mean, you can find it, but you got to dig for it. It's not at the top of Google. I'll tell you that right now.
Nope.
So, to clear in literally a day later, I mean, gun was used for good against a gun trying to be used for evil. Clear as day. So, again, I think the best solution we have is better security in schools and physical armed trained security. And like you were saying, Andrew, there needs to be good standards in place. You can't just have willy-nilly guys in there. You know, we can't treat this like mall cops.
Yeah.
You know, riding around on little what are those things called? Segways, yeah. Like it's not what we're talking about here. Yeah, I've seen this point made a lot.
Hey man, Paul Blart did good though in those movies.
He did, yeah. It's true. But I've seen this point made a lot too, and I think it's an oversimplification, but I like where it's going, and it's that we have, you know, hundreds of thousands of unemployed veterans in this nation who would love the opportunity to.
Who all they want to do is protect. They still want to do what they do. They want to serve. They want to protect.
Because they say they're seeking for a purpose. You know, a lot of them don't. They feel like they don't have a purpose since they got out. Like they would love to have some sort of like meaning again.
Yeah, and that's why they're unemployed.
Like at least, you know, we were all infantry guys, so there's not a lot of like skill sets that you bring away from the infantry, like from being an 11 Bravo, that you can apply into the real world. Besides the fact that, like, you know how to deal with the suck, like,
yeah,
and how to mop.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and that's a big reason why a lot of them are unemployed. You know, it's tough. I remember how hard it was. It's hard to go from that job where you have that level of camaraderie, and you have this like, you go from that level of like intensity, but like. You genuinely love the people around you that you're working with, and you're in it together, and you can rely on each other. You go from that, and then also, you know, literally dealing in life and death situations, even just in training. I mean, we jumped out of airplanes. Like that's not.
I don't know why. I
don't either, dude. We all hated it, dude.
We all did. Never seen one of us. That's like one of our customers. He's like been going down to, I think, Florida, right?
Yeah, a few places.
He's doing static line jumping. He got like certified. There's this.
Why?
I don't know. Anyways, he loves it. Good for him.
I guess
that's cool. He's like pretty into like, you know, like historical, like airborne operations and stuff like that, which it's pretty cool. But he's always like, man, you guys got to go down there and come jump with me. And I'm like, no, dude, I'm not doing it.
Yeah. And you know, like if I didn't do that for a living, I would be 100% down, you know?
Oh yeah.
But the fact that, and I don't know, they do jumps, and they do a jump every few years into Normandy, or every year, I think, an actual jump out of like historical aircraft and stuff. And it's pretty cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, it is actually pretty cool. And I was like, man, I might do that. And in order to do that, you have to go to their training, and it's kind of funny. They literally do airborne school in like, I think it's like 5 days or something.
Oh no.
They do 5 jumps and
it is airborne school,
all that stuff. But our airborne school is 3 weeks. So, which I remember being like, man, we're going to be jumping out of airplanes in 3 weeks. It seems like a short amount of time. And they do that in like 5 days. So it's pretty cool. It shows how.
Was it jump week's 5 days? Yeah.
Yeah.
You got 2 weeks training, and then you got jump week.
Yep. But yeah, anyways, where are we going with this?
I don't know where you were going.
Airborne. No, I was saying that. How do we get on airborne?
The unemployed veterans.
Okay, yeah. So you go from like danger, you know, life and death, and kind of a high intensity job, and you know, you're also there's slight brainwashing as well. You're told like you're the best, and you're the 1% of the 1%, blah blah blah, and all that dumb stuff, you know. But so you go from that, and then you go out into the civilian world, and it's like no one cares about you, and you go into it. I remember we just talked about this yesterday. I remember going into it thinking like, oh yeah, you know, my coworkers, like I'll get to know them and it's gonna be cool. And no, like it's you if you tell someone something in confidence, it's gonna be talked about behind your back. That person's like constantly trying to leverage their position over you and trying to, you know, and that's just that's what it is. It's cutthroat. It's
even that in the law enforcement like world. Like it's bad.
Yeah,
it's worse than. Like, it's not even close to the military. Like, they try to structure it like the military, like rank systems and all that stuff. And it's like, dude, you guys are all jacked up.
Yeah. But you go from that level of camaraderie, and of course there's like you have purpose drilled into you, and if you're doing all this stuff, you've lost buddies, in some cases and things like that. It's like this high level of involvement, and then you go from that into just like a regular job, and no one really cares about you or what you've done or who you are or what you're, it's all about like, everyone's looking out for number one, and which that's almost in a way that's in complete contrast to what the military culture is like. You're always looking out for your battle buddy in the military. That's something I admire about the military. They teach you to be selfless. They teach you to care about your buddy over yourself. Again,
it's about the man next to you. It's not about you.
Yeah. So you go from that to this other thing, and before you know it, you're getting in trouble for, being passionate, or like, you get busted up or you get fired because you used some, you got a little too heated and you used some language and you cussed out the wrong guy or whatever the case may be. And then you're unemployed, and it's like, what the heck? And you're trying to find jobs, and then that job that they always want your job reference, and they call that guy, well, yeah, he's a hothead and he's just a crazy veteran. And, and it's getting harder and harder because veterans aren't needed anymore. Like there's no need anymore for like we're not fighting right now. So I've seen it over the last few years. Like the culture shifted. Like, all right, we're tired of the whole like Afghanistan thing. We're tired of that. Like, yeah, there's tons and tons and tons of veterans. Point being, it's hard. It's hard for a lot of veterans. You have to like completely rewire your brain to like fit in, and that's a hard transition to make. And that's why literally coming out of the military, they train you for almost a year. It's called, the Army called it ACAP.
Well, they say that.
And well, I think they do an okay job. The problem is that it's like the actual ACAP program, I think
the ACAP program is good if your unit lets you do it.
But your unit
has to
treats it like crap, and they treat you like crap for going, and they're like, oh, you're just going to come back and
get out of work.
Yeah, or like, why are you even doing that? You're going to just, in 2 years, you're going to be right back here signing back up again, and they make you feel like a piece of crap. So yeah, it's it's so weird. But anyways, and so like then when you get out, yeah. So long story short, you've got these guys that, again, a lot of them joined to protect, and a lot of them joined. That was the way they came up with to stop evil. Not everyone, and there's bad apples, and you'd have to have a good vetting process. I think there needs to be. Because you can't, we all know there's a lot of veterans out there that are into some shady business and into some trash, and you don't want that introduced into the schools. No. You do not. And so there needs to be a very thorough vetting process, but some kind of program that gets some of those guys in there. I mean, they've already got some training. They would still have to pass the standards, but they understand the importance. That really, to me, they understand big things that, someone that's new to like firearms and stuff doesn't. Trigger finger discipline, muzzle awareness. Those are two things that like, it's just boop. It's automatic for a veteran. Like, you see it all the time.
And they know the seriousness of like where their bullets are going. Like,
yep.
I mean, we all
knowing what your target and beyond it and around it,
They know life and death.
Yeah.
They understand like literally what that means.
In
not
stressful
like,
situations.
I read a book. It's like, no.
Most of the people, they know how they react under stressful situations. So that's an important thing too, because, if you find yourself in an active shooter situation, it is going to be incredibly stressful. So knowing like where you stand at it, like how good you are under pressure, some things that you maybe lack and you can focus on, like, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know what a firearm does. A firearm and why it was created. A firearm was made to kill more efficiently. It's just exactly what it's designed to do. Getting rid of them or taking them away it's not going to help us, because those ones that are serialized, the ones that are the good citizens that are doing out the 4473s and stuff like that, you're just taking away from the good, It's, like you were saying, there's millions and millions of firearms that aren't registered. There's million firearms that no one knows about, things like that. You can get them in all over the place, the quote unquote ghost gun. it's like I said, it's just taking away from the good citizens. You know, you're gonna mistreat it, and then it can be even more dangerous. It can lead into more evil. It can lead into something that we wouldn't want even more. You know.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, it's just I keep coming back to that. It's a no-brainer. Like, let's get a program put together. We have the money and resources for it as a nation. Like, you're not going to convince me otherwise. That's the thing too. I keep saying, well, they just can't afford to do armed security. Like, what?
Yeah.
How much money do we just send to the Ukraine, and we don't even really fully understand what's going on there?
I'm not gonna.
And it goes full circle too. I mean, our tax dollars have already invested into giving these people their initial training, you know, and it's, you know, you're giving that person purpose, the veteran, you know, again, like, hey, I got actually a good job, you know, he could have good benefits, he could pay pretty decent.
It should pay well,
know?
and it should have good benefits.
And that person's willing to still go out and probably get their own training, because most veterans realize how how important it is to, you know, be the best they can be, you know.
Yeah.
Especially when they take their job seriously, you know, and more than likely, if you have a good interview process and you vet your people that you're bringing into these programs,
Background checks, you know, all
these
that
guys
stuff.
are going to want to continue to get better, and they probably would spend their own money to go out and continue to be the best they could be, you know. I know if I was in that situation, I would.
Yeah.
That would be a...
Well, you already do. I mean, in all aspects of what you do, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's a little biased because we're in the gun industry, but I mean, still, it's like that's something that even before the gun industry, it's stuff we did, you know.
Yeah.
Like even in the military, we didn't just rely on our you and I got into competition shooting, and you know, we started training on our own. I remember being in the guard tower in Afghanistan, like practicing
doing mag
reloads
changes
and
for
stuff.
8 hours.
Yeah. It's like we saw it. We were like, oh, we are not going to get as good as we could be just going to doing the weird ready up training that we do on the range, and you know, or shooting
We
at
sat there
300
and
yards.
raced each other for hours.
Yeah, we worked on you know, different things like that, and exactly. I mean, and even if it's not, and I'm not saying it needs to be veterans. That's, you know, that's not what I'm saying either. I'm just saying we have a surplus of unemployed vets who would gladly take a job like that, who could easily pass all the requirements, who are good people, who have basic key, you know, pillars of understanding of the importance of a lot of this prior to even starting any kind of training program, you know. And you see that a lot too in this industry. There's this whole push towards, you know, well, you know, veterans can't shoot, like, you know, and you've started to see this like more and more. And I think that's, you know, I think it's very true. But when it comes to something like this, like I said, I think the most important things you can have are just those fundamentals of like, that person's not going to make a mistake, a simple like firearms, you know, handling mistake, like trigger finger discipline and muzzle awareness are just, you know, I forget sometimes, like when we go out and train, and we train with guys that don't have a military background, I'm like, oh, hold on. Like, all right, this is where your trigger finger needs to be. You know, obviously when we run our classes, that's a completely different thing. Like we're very strict on it and stuff like that. But I'm talking about just like our training that we do on, you know, where we're like, hey, let's get together and train, guys, let's go. And sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, you know, when we bring new people out or whatever, it's like, you know what I mean? It kind of slips your mind for a second. You're like,
yeah, you got most of the people that we train with, like that we're actually taking out, and like they're not paying to be in a class, you know.
Yeah.
It's like everyone, we got quite a few prior military guys, or just guys that have, you know, been around this for a while. So
yeah,
it's, you get used to, like, you kind of just loop them all in, and then you got like one guy who maybe isn't around as much, and it's like, oh yeah, shoot, I should probably at least touch on this with this guy just so that everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, but I believe that's really good for that one individual too, to see how everyone can, you know, is handling their stuff. And
for sure,
being in with people that are experienced. I tell people all the time, you need to shoot with people who are 10 times better than you, and you need to shoot with people that you're 10 times better than, you know, like it's so that you can teach them and they can teach you. You know, it's how you get better. It's, you know, with everything, not just, you know, quote unquote shooting range, but it's training in general. No,
it's great. I mean, that I guess the point I was trying to make is like, if I take a random, like if you, whenever you come out while you're up here, you're visiting, you come shoot with us, I'm not going to have to like watch your trigger finger and be like, oh, you know, because you just got lit up for a whole year. I know that you spent a year of your life getting your butt handed to you for like moving your finger a little bit towards the trigger.
Yeah.
Like you get, that is just part of who you are now. Like your muzzle has a laser coming out of the end of it. You're not going to sweep anybody with it. And your finger never goes on the trigger until you're ready to shoot. You know, that's just like, that is just a part of your life now. So those are two very important things, I think, for this kind of work. So that's just a benefit you get for, I think, from having vets. But of course they'd have to go through a process.
And going on to that too, like, what do you think? Like, what do you think their firearm should be? Like, you think they should? Because I think you should give them a firearm that's going to be the most effective. Like, yeah, it's a little weird for them to be cruising around with an AR-15, but at the same time, it's probably like, if I'm in that position and all I got's a handgun and the active shooter's got an AR, I'm going to be kind of like pissed off in a way.
No, I mean, I think, you know, I hate to say it, and this is where people are just going to have to step outside of their comfort zone. I think we were talking about making it a hard target. I think a part of that is having a guy in armor with a carbine. And that's part of the job. That's part of, like, you know, I would hope at this point that parents are going to find like some comfort in that and be like, okay, my school, yeah, my kid's going to have to get used to seeing this. This is part of it. But guess what? Like,
it's part of your world.
It's time to step outside of your little soft bed with your covered by your rose petals. If you go anywhere else in the world, I've been to a lot of different countries, and every single one of those countries I've been to, the amount of armed security that's walking around with like AKs or whatever. Like I remember in Indonesia, you can't own guns in Indonesia. It's illegal. Civilians can't have them. In fact, you go to jail for life if you get caught with a gun. Every single government building, every single bank, schools, you know, places like that had private security carrying Galils. They had Galils, which I thought was interesting, like South African Galils.
That's pretty cool. Carrying
Galils, protecting all those facilities. And you're like, why? Like, it's Indonesia. No one's allowed to own guns here. But yet there's heavily armored security at all these positions. And it's just a part of that. Like, that's just a part of the culture there. And it's like, oh yeah, that's the armed, that, like, those are the armed security for whatever, for this facility, for that, for this, for that. And they're just out there in the open. Like, we're driving around and it's like, oh, interesting. Obviously Afghanistan, you can't even really use Afghanistan as a comparison because it's crazy. But even being in Peru, like, the law enforcement were like kitted up pretty heavy. You look in Mexico and they're dealing with cartels and stuff. Their law enforcement's kitted up. Like, a lot of their guys look like SF dudes, walking around. And people are reluctant to have America look like that. And, I don't want America to look like that either. But I would rather America look like that than look like what it looks like now with, like, all these killings and things like that. It's going to be, someone's going to have to think really long and hard about hitting a building that's got, a handful or maybe just one or two guys cruising around that are close knit. They've got body armor on, they've got carbines, and they're ready to rock and roll. They're literally there to stop someone like that.
Yeah, and if you're really, like, super concerned about, like, the look of it, you could literally just have a guy that's, got plates that are a little bit more concealed.
Oh,
like smaller plates.
Yeah.
Handgun, which that's not really that big of a deal. And a backpack, man. Like,
yeah.
You can, especially 300 blackouts, like, you can have a very effective platform that's pretty small that can fit in a backpack.
Yeah.
That can be taken out and
I think that's
quickly.
I think that's a great platform. I think it's like a SIG MCX chambered in 300 blackout. SIG's already got a bunch of government contracts. Let's get a program going to arm some schools, and you could throw a can on that, even like get it suppressed and got a nice and tidy suppressed platform for
make you feel even more cool.
Yeah.
I would feel way cooler if I had a suppressor.
Yeah. Absolutely. You got to protect the little one's ears. That's how you got to say it.
Yeah, dude.
Number one rule is looking cool. So
yeah, no, it'd be a no-brainer for me to have a suppressor on a team like that, or for guards like that, because linear fighting areas, you're dealing with, like, hallways that are gonna have, it's gonna be, you know, disorienting to have that kind of sound bouncing around. I mean, we've all shot indoors. We know how loud and stupid it is, and they keep it nice and tidy. So, yep, I don't know. And yeah, we've spent a lot of time on that, and I think we've kind of beaten this horse to death. But that's
it's a cool
just
program. I'm just saying. Like,
yeah, it is. I mean, we might need to dive into this a little deeper. Offline, and I don't know. I want to talk to some schools here locally and figure out like where they're at, where their heads at, what they can and can't do. I know the school districts, it goes all the way, like it's deep. You know, this isn't. It's not as simple as
I think
just
it would
like,
be. I think it would go back to the state level, though. Would it be?
It probably does. I think.
I don't think it'd be handled federally. I think it would be more state.
Oh, it should be. I think it should be state. Yeah, but you
Which
know,
makes it a lot more doable. I think.
I think some resources and data should be pulled federally. Like we need to have a way to get states on the same page roughly. I think states should. I'm not a big fan of like the government coming in and like, this is what we're doing. I think it's stupid. I think states should be ultimately responsible for it. But I mean, kind of on that, what are you guys' thoughts on like going a step further and arming teachers or staff?
Honestly, that's something that I would love to see happen. It's and it's more for the you know, I mean, how am I trying to say it? It's more for just having everyone acclimated to it in a way. The more that there is involved, the firearm community getting inside schools, the more it's going to be, you know, I guess, you know, common, you know, for a teacher or for students to see that type of stuff. You know, like, you know, it's not just, you know, a teacher having a firearm in their car or having their own personal firearm as an LTC or something that they carry daily on them. It's something that should be a part of their lives. It's something that should be a part of their work. You know, if they go into becoming a teacher, you also need to understand that you are going to be doing qualifications on firearms. It's not just the education that you're trying to protect. It's themselves. You know, it's you. It's yourself. It's your classroom. You know, a lot of people talk about. You know, I think we had a conversation about doors being magnetic locked, and how you were saying it's a fire hazard. I mean, there are other hazards right now that we're having to deal with, and that's firearms coming into schools and putting hurt on people. You know, so there are, I think, good. I'm sorry. There is some good to have. I think having a teachers being involved, that way it gets more than just having a veteran or having a guard at the front door, you know, saying, oh, this is what goes, it's a community effort. It's not, you know, that guy's not going to always come through the front door. You know, there's other places, there's other points of entries, you know, things like that. And it's more on everyone as a whole and everyone as a community to protect each other. It's not just the guards. It's not just the guy with the plate carrier. It's not just the guy with the cool suppressor. It's teachers. It's the faculty. You know, it's the community. You know?
Yeah. Well, I think my personal perspective on it is it should be treated just like it is already. Like if you are the kind of person that wants to carry for your own defense and for defense of others, and you happen to be a teacher, that should just dovetail right into class. You should be able to do it. There should be standards.
Yes, absolutely. That's something I was going to say too. You can't just do it.
And I think ultimately, if you're a teacher that has that mindset, you're not going to have issues with going through the standards to get approved for it.
Absolutely not.
Like, I mean, it's the same situation as people, you know, having to have a permit in order to carry a firearm. You know, luckily enough for Alaska, we don't have to do that, but I don't know what they got going in Texas. But
we just got to a constitutional carry state about a couple months ago, but LTCs are still a thing.
That's license to carry, by the way, for those that don't know. So
yeah, we went from a CCW concealed carry permit to a LTC, and now we're at a constitutional carry, and that passed, you know, a few months ago. But
so you don't need any kind of license now?
No, but I can already kind of tell you that, you know, we have the, you know, 30-06 and 30-07 penal code. I can guarantee you, even though Texas just became a constitutional carry state, I'm guarantee you they're going to come out with some 30-08, which means unless you have an LTC, you're not going to be able to carry type stuff, you know, in certain establishments. That's just in what my eyes as I see what's happening, just penal codes type stuff. But
so it won't be constitutional carry then.
Exactly right. Like it's like that's how I see it. How I see it kind of evolving into.
Because we're constitutional carry here. You just have to be legally allowed to own a firearm.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
I think literally the only thing is you have to be legally allowed to own a firearm, and then you have to be over 21 in most situations.
Oh,
you can be. You have to be 16 and older if you're going to be like
In the woods.
in the woods hunting. Like it's like a weird distinction. Yeah, it's
All right.
Alaska, dude. It's Alaska, man. There's
I know-
bear here and stuff. So yeah, constitutional carry, but you can get a CCW permit here. And it's pretty cool because if you get it, you're NICS exempt. So then you can just show your card and then you don't have to go through the background check because the background check's already been done. And then also you have the biggest reason I think it's worth getting is for carry reciprocity. So you can carry in, I think, 38 different states.
That's
if you
what
have
I
it.
tell. It is 38 states. That's what I tell people all the time. It's like when they come into the shop and they're like, "Well, I don't have to get an LTC," and I'm like, "Well, yeah, but do you go to Louisiana?" They're like, "Yeah, we go there. I got family in Louisiana." Well, once you cross that little imaginary line, you just broke the rule. You just broke that law. You can get in real big in trouble. This allows you to carry in multiple states, not just yours.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But-
Which is cool. But yeah, I mean, the biggest, going back to arming teachers, the biggest thing I see, I guess, rebuttal to that is like, well, teachers didn't become teachers. They became teachers to teach, not carry guns. And it's like,
became
okay,
teachers to nurture young ones. To
hopefully
get to past what they are right now.
Yeah.
They didn't just do it to teach that one day, that one classroom.
Yeah.
They did it because they love their community. They want the little ones to succeed. Little things like that. It's not just because they wanted to have a teaching job for that week or something.
yeah.
Yeah.
And some of them probably do. And I think that's the wrong mentality. I mean, hopefully your whole reason for becoming a teacher was to,
Genuinely
help and
benefit.
educate the next generation. And part of that, I think,
Is
is
protecting
keeping them alive.
Yeah.
No, but the point I was going to get to, though, is I'm not saying make it mandatory for teachers to carry. If you want to, then I think you should be able
Yeah,
to.
if they don't want to, I don't want them having a gun. 'Cause
Exactly. Yeah.
They're not going to use it when the time comes. I mean, they might, but I'm just saying, like, if you're not willing to even consider it, then you're probably not willing to actually use it.
Yeah,
so.
and that's fine. And, that's the biggest rebuttal. It's like, well, most teachers wouldn't even want to carry a gun at all. And it's like, okay, well, then they don't have to. And I think that's why going back to that, kind of coming back full circle to the armed security position, those are people that are going to apply for that job because they want that job. So that's your main first line of defense. But then, yeah, if you've got teachers that
Yeah, having
go to
both's
school,
better.
exactly. Yeah, going back to what you said, Andrew, like it's a communal effort, but again, I think it should be completely on your own decision. Like I don't believe in forcing. Like if you're a staff of the school, you're going to carry a gun. I don't really believe in that. I think it should be on the teacher, but I think it should be allowed. And yes, I think there needs to be standards in place.
I mean, there's standards for us to, I have to give out a standard for, handing someone an LTC. I have to, make sure that they deemed it's okay. And honestly, that's all I really have to do. And then, all right, you can go get your license now. It should be a little bit more, intense, I guess you can say. But for something like that, for having a job inside a school district or an independent school district or, just, private schools in general, it should be a little bit more strenuous, I guess you can say the qualifications are, but because I mean, you're liable for every shot that goes out,
Yep.
and there are a lot of more little ones running around than there would be in a situation where, law enforcement's having to go into a house, it's, yeah, you might have a bad guy there, but now you have a bad guy with a whole bunch of little ones at a school, so it should be a lot more strenuous than just having an LTC. It should be qualifications, couple of months. It should be, training effort, classroom effort, not just range time.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And what you were talking about too, first aid, man, I keep thinking about that story of the little girl who openly stated from that shooting is, she had to use her classmates' blood to put on her to hide, and that's something that no one should ever have to do.
Yeah.
Like especially that age. That's just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And the fact that we weren't there, no one was there to help out those people. No one was there to even, give out that first aid. It bothers me, and I'm sure it bothers y'all, but no, I would like to see a change.
Yeah. And it's the thing that's most frustrating is I think everybody knows what the change needs to be.
Absolutely.
It's what we're talking about. I mean, it's not nothing we're saying should be controversial. It is, but it shouldn't be. It's a no-brainer. Like, how do we respond to an active shooting?
And put them down.
Police show up with guns, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what's the only difference? Well, the difference is you've got someone with a gun on the premises ready to go right
then
here,
and
right
there.
now.
Yeah.
So,
Or multiple people.
yeah, which I think it should be. I think there should be an SOP that's put in place that's, size of the school dictates how many people you need, or like the layout of the school, and budgets and stuff are going to come into play. But I mean, I think it should. I think it's perfectly reasonable. I mean, I'd be willing for my taxes to pay for that.
I would be too. I'd also be willing to,
stay
involved.
just because every teacher doesn't want to carry a gun. Every teacher should go through some sort of trauma training classes.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, I mean, your training's only going to take you so far if you don't have the tools to actually deal with the problem. So you need to have trauma kits
Yeah.
readily available throughout the entire school.
And that's something we're going to try to push heavily in our local schools, is like, these are kits that should just be not just in schools. I mean, we have had great success getting them in churches. Actually, we got 3 bleeding control kits sitting in the front right now that are about to get shipped out to a church. Churches too. I mean, this isn't just about schools. It's any place that innocent people gather together. Churches get targeted extremely often. There's a long history of active shootings in churches as well. So, yeah, they all need to be protected. The cool thing about churches, though, is that they're not as beholden to, like, there's the separation of church and state. So churches are more flexible. They're able to make their own decisions for their own security, and it's private. So we've had lots of success in
not only putting trauma kits, but establishing security teams as well.
Yep. We have a full program on that kind of got I don't want to say taken out, but somewhat derailed by COVID, because a lot of churches closed down during COVID, and we were working with a lot of churches, and a lot of those projects kind of got delayed, and we just haven't been able to get back to that program, unfortunately, but we're working on it. So we have a full program that we've developed specifically for setting up and training church security teams.
That's awesome.
And it's everything. It's not just for shootings. Actually, that's like one of the smaller focuses, because the odds are so low. Yeah. I want to make that point too. Like, we're talking about active shootings like they're going to happen in every single school. They're actually super rare, like even to this day. But the point being is that they are happening more and more, and we need to do something before it gets to the point. Now's a preventative time. Like, one school getting shot up is too many, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
We need to act now, make it so where this is like almost impossible.
Be proactive, not reactive.
Yeah.
Like, in a way, we're kind of being reactive, but because it is happening. But I'm saying, like, before it gets to the point where it's like happening everywhere and it's just a common thing, nip it in the bud right now.
Yeah, it should be super difficult for someone to make the decision to go in and mass murder in a school, a church, anywhere like that. It should just be very difficult. And evil finds a way to do evil. So making a hard target here is going to reveal a soft target somewhere else.
Oh, yeah.
And this stuff will continue. But, unfortunately, we got to do that dance. We got to figure out.
Community comes in.
Yeah, exactly. And I think getting good at protecting our schools is going to enable our communities to get good at protecting other areas. And it's going to make people start thinking more acting and thinking more proactively, and, being more aware, things like that. It's going to change the culture. I think the culture will shift if we start to push this kind of stuff. So yeah, anything else on preventative solutions or kind of preparedness for schools?
I'm sure there's other stuff, but
I mean, I think like you brought up magnetic locking doors, like things like what banks have, like silent alarms should 100% be an emergency button in every classroom. That stuff's cheap.
It's easy.
It's cheap to have installed. It really is. Those kind of buttons, that are attached to a phone line that boom, call, put them in a place where they're not going to accidentally get hit. That would be dumb. But think about it. But yeah, I mean, if I'm in a classroom, like I'm just thinking from a teacher's perspective, I want to be able to, one, lock that door without having to do some kind of funky, weird chair barricade.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like having contractors come in and install like new doors that do that. Like, would it be expensive to do nationwide? Yeah. But
would it be beneficial?
But is it really that expensive though compared to everything else we're spending money on? No, it's not. And I guarantee you, a lot of contractors, I know for a fact around here, a lot of contractors would donate their time to do it. I know for a fact. I worked in the construction industry for a long time. Even the company I worked for, I mean, I know for a fact he'd be like, my old boss would be like, oh yeah, just, you know, you get me the doors and we'll be there. Don't worry about it. I'll have my guys put them in. You know, it would be like that. And tons of people would do that. And, you know, I'm not saying it'd be like that across the nation, but I think it would though. I mean, I think a lot of contractors would be like, yeah, let's donate our time, guys. Let's run down there and put these doors in. So, I mean, that's just one thing, but you know, you got that. And then again, going back to what I was saying, if I was a teacher, I was in a classroom, I'd want to be able to lock that door and I'd want to be able to push a button that called for law enforcement, you know, and who cares if it's redundant? Like if they've already been called, good, like keep calling them, you know? And yeah. And then on top of that, I want to be able to deploy a firearm and defend my classroom if I need to, you know, it's just, there's just no excuses for it. We have the answers. We just need to start implementing them.
Oh,
so yeah. And then kind of jumping back onto trauma kits. I mean, that's just like, we need to, I'm nodding over at Steven, but yeah, we definitely need to start seeing what we can do for that because they're really not that expensive to get, you know? And I think we just need to start making it. I just don't think a lot of schools understand how attainable they are. Like, I think they're just like, oh, like they just aren't thinking about it, you know?
Yeah.
Or they're got, you know, they call the fire department in and the fire department's like, well, yeah, we've got OSHA first aid kits, you know, that we can install and stuff. They're like, oh, you know, but trauma kits and then backing it up with the training because you got to have the training, you know? Just like with the handguns, one, it's going to, you know, make sure everyone's on the same page, but more importantly, it actually makes sure people understand how to use the equipment and make an effective difference. So that's more like after the fact, but I think part of preventative measures is part of like post-attack measures as well, like immediately stopping bleeds, you know, that right there. I mean, it's been proven in combat that keeps people alive.
Oh yeah.
Even just like a teacher being in a classroom, if somebody did run through and shoot some people and keep moving, you know, God forbid, but if that were to happen, you got some kids bleeding out, understanding how to put tourniquets on and literally save people. Like that's just, that kind of stuff needs to just be, you know, trained and taught, and the gear needs to be in schools. So we can't do it if it's not there, you know, but
definitely.
So, what are some things you guys, we've kind of already touched in on it, but what are some things that you guys think can be done at an individual level? So you're just someone listening to this podcast.
Seek training. You know, for y'all have Dynamic Defense Solutions here. If you're here locally, come in here, and if you have any questions, talk to Jacob, talk to Steven. You know, they can help you out if it's not just about the mechanics of a firearm or manipulating a firearm, but what we're talking about with the first aid and the trauma kits. You know, that's life-saving information. You know, if you don't know it, you can always come in and just ask. You know, and I know that y'all are gonna more than willing to help out y'all's people. You know, so just seek it. It all comes down to you. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then also like what I brought up right at the beginning of the podcast, you know, be active in your community as far as votes and go to the school board, make your opinion known, you know. Yeah, it's sometimes feels like your voice is kind of going unheard in some of those situations, but I think it's so important, and I think the more people that are willing to do it, the more you'll get the ball rolling, I guess. So,
yeah. We're coming up on like midterms here soon. Going to be a lot of people running for positions. Ask them where they stand on this stuff. This is the time to bring up the question. What do they plan on doing about it? Have they even thought about it? Are they going to give you some runabout answer that doesn't make any sense?
Well, right now, our government wants to talk about gun control, but I mean, we saw in Afghanistan they couldn't even control our own firearms and gave over 300,000 of them to Taliban. You know,
Yeah.
like, you want to talk to me about gun control, and you can't even do it for our military. You know, to in another country, a country that we were at war with. You know, just recently.
Yeah. With literally like, and it wasn't just guns. It was like
It's tanks, it's vehicles, it's aircraft. You know, it's
drones, bombs, rocket launchers.
Yeah, like you want to talk about gun control? Like you flip that switch real quick.
yeah.
You know, like
yeah. No, I mean, it's that would be kind of piggybacking on that, like express concern to your local politicians and local politicians, reps, senators, all of them say like, hey, this is not the solution. We've talked about it before, but making calls and writing emails, it's too easy, and it's something you need to be in the habit of doing. Do it at the local level, do it at the state level. Let them know. Like, I am concerned about our solutions for what's going on. I want solutions. Here's what I think would work. I was always told that if you want to complain about something, have a solution. And I think that's important. So if you have something you're going to complain about, don't make that complaint known unless you've got something you think could be a solution for whatever that complaint is. I think it's a good rule of thumb to have. And I think with politics, it's very important. So especially when you're writing like a politician, letting them know like, hey, I don't like where we're going with this. This is what I think would be a more effective way to handle this. Like in this case, you could say, I do not see how restricting or making more gun laws, banning guns, confiscating guns, whatever the case may be. I don't see how that's going to help anything other than just make it easier for predators to attack prey. So how about we start being proactive and we start looking at getting armed security positions funded by the state in every school in the state. Let's look at it. Like, it can't hurt with.
Obviously something's not working, right?
Yeah.
It's like, so let's change it.
Yep.
We got to start somewhere.
And then there's the whole side, like the whole false flag thing, that gets brought up a lot. And, obviously it's stuff that we've all talked about and thought about, but it's a lot harder. I feel like it's a lot harder to get away with something like that if we have all these measures in place. And it's just really weird to me that, the current administration and our highest level of government hasn't made a single effort to talk about those possible solutions over, just it's time to get rid of guns. Yet they're guarded by
guns,
Secret Service and firearms and some of the best armed security in the world. So I think it was Colion Noir that made a point. I thought it was really good. He said if Biden's kids went to that school, this shooting would have never happened.
Yep.
It's like, dude, yeah. Think about that for a second. I thought that was a great point.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we need to start working as a community. We need to get in there. We need to make our thoughts known. We need to promote self-sufficiency. Like, need to get used to. Yeah, I'm glad we have law enforcement. Yes, there's good men and women serving, serving behind the badge and all that stuff. But they can't always be there. But you're there. So you need to take responsibility for your own safety, for your family's safety, for community safety, and at a minimum, I think. And that extends into the schools. And yeah, you can't necessarily, I'm not saying you necessarily have to be the one to run in that door, but maybe you do. I don't know.
Someone's got to. Someone
does. And again, we can't see what happened in Uvalde again.
Mm-mm.
That was ridiculous. 40 plus minutes. 40 minutes to an hour of just nothing going on while shots are ringing out, literally tasing and physically stopping parents from trying to get into the school.
They wouldn't stop me. I'd be in trouble in a different way.
I do find it interesting, though, that the shooter was, we're kind of wrapping up, but I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on this really quick. So the gun industry in the last couple of years has been really shifting from just like, oh, you should own guns, you should buy guns, you should own guns, buy them, buy guns, yeah, sick, to like, oh, it's time to actually have guns that make sense and train with them and train often. And how about you buy armor? How about you buy like modern equipment that could help you in a fight? So the last couple of years has really shifted to that. Find it really interesting that this shooter had camouflage on and like did he actually have body armor?
I don't know. I know that
Or he had like a vest on or something. And
there's been a few shootings that have happened recently that they're like actually kitted out
Yeah.
for. It's like, huh.
That's how we practice
and-
the Mozambique drill.
Well, what I'm leading up to though is that shootings prior to this, the political agenda was, ban guns, ban guns, ban guns. Then it shifted to, ban assault rifles, ban assault rifles, ban assault rifles. And all the shootings that got like majorly talked about were with ARs or AR type weapons. And now it's like you're seeing, body armor needs to be banned. Like, there should be a ban against, if you're not military, you shouldn't be allowed to wear camo and stuff like that. And it's like, it's interesting. It's interesting that the shift has gone more from like ban assault rifles to like.
It's just people wanting to put blame on
It's
something.
fun to put blame, but I think there's something there. I really think there's something there. Like, I think it's not a coincidence that this shooting happens, and I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of saying that the shooting was fake or anything. There's a lot of that. This is not the time to do any of that. But I find it sickening that they're pinpointing little specific things about what this shooter did and trying to like use it as fuel to get, certain agendas pushed, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So it's weird. And it's weird that they're focusing on all these little things that the civilian training kind of community has been focusing towards for the last couple of years. So I don't know.
3.0.
4.0 or whatever.
I don't know.
Whatever
They
it
keep
is.
changing it
I know.
up.
It's getting annoying. Just yeah, the new gun culture, which I think is good. I think it's awesome. I think people are focusing on bigger picture things.
Yep.
That's kind of the whole reason we do this podcast. So it's to
And
talk
it's also
about more
weird
than just
because
guns.
it's like, it's so, I think Andrew mentioned it a little earlier, but it's so backwards thinking because it's like, let's take guns, let's take body armor, let's take camouflage, let's take all this like stuff that would make you basically a militia within yourself, like within your community. But yet that's exactly what we're giving to Ukraine to fight Russia.
Mm-hmm.
We're sending it all to civilians over there.
Yeah, we're
And
sending.
it's like you're sending all this stuff to them to make them be able to defend themselves because their own military couldn't do it for them. So you're sending it so that civilians can help. Why would you want to take that from our country? We already have that.
Yep.
I mean, that's getting into a whole different topic, but I'm just saying, like,
Yeah, we were giving them the 9mm bullets that, knock out your people's lungs.
Did you see that?
dude, I need some of those 9mm bullets. Dude.
Yeah. Did you see that, Steven?
Yeah, I did.
What did he say? He's like, yeah, they say 22. You can, get it out and save it. You can just tell he had no clue what he's talking
Yeah, it
about.
it's
goes
just-
in the lungs.
Yeah,
and
they're
you
saying
can
that you
get
can
it
get a
out.
22 out and you can save them. The 9mm, that's the one's going to blow your lungs out.
That's just that type of stuff. It's if you don't know, then don't just assume. Like you're gonna make yourself just. You're gonna be that guy.
Yeah,
Like,
that
you
Sleepy
don't-
Joe
you
guy.
don't want to be that guy. I'm telling
No,
you.
you don't. Yep.
Seek the training, seek the actual knowledge, the real knowledge inside these industries, not the ones that you just hear because people that don't like it just start saying stuff. Like get the real knowledge. I don't care what opinion or what side of the fence you are about the firearms. Like I've taught people who have want nothing to do with firearms, and these are some of my favorite students. Because they still came in and took a class. Some of them have told me like, well, the opinion's still the same. Well, at least you took the class. At least you know what to do. At least you know how to, how the mechanics of a firearm work. And
Safety.
And that's something that I respect. Like, but you can walk out this door. I don't care. Like, you're not going to thank you for taking the class, but your opinion's your opinion. I'm not going to change it. I'm not going to try to change it. You're
No.
going to have to change it. you know?
Yeah.
And were they taking it because it was, they didn't like firearms, but they saw the need for it, basically?
Yeah. And it's like, I want you as a student. I want that, like
That's
I
cool.
would love to.
That is cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and going off that, obviously we're Dynamic Defense Solutions, me and Jacob. What you want to talk about what
Oh,
you do down
yeah.
in Texas?
So me and a couple people, we run what's called Pride Wind Tactics, and pretty much what it is we're an online base for getting your LTCs. You know, we want people to have their license. We want people to have the knowledge and, you know, have the ability if they want to. Like, yes, we're an open carry state now, or a constitutional carry state now, but it's still beneficial. The knowledge is still there of having, you know, what, you know, how to, you know, what the penal codes mean on those doors and stuff like that. But we also, you know, train, you know, do some individual classes. And Pride Wind Tactics is, you know, our slogan is shield your community. You know, and that's where we start. We're starting within the community. We're going all out. We've gotten a couple of ranges that, you know, we've gained some, relationships with, and, you know, so they're able to put us out there on, you know, 360 ranges with, you know, people who've never even been inside of a range before, just to give them the experience, just to show them, like, this is how you train. This is more than just going to the lane and, you know, putting a piece of paper up and pulling the trigger until you're out of ammo. This is what's happening with the firearm as you pull the trigger back. You know, and it's so we focus a lot on just training students, and training our community. But instead of one of our main pushes is, you know, to get those LTCs out, get licenses in the people's hands of, you know, my area. You know, I want people to be able to defend themselves, you know, so that's what we mainly work on.
Yeah. So for people that are in Texas listening, how can they get training from you if they want?
Well, if they go to pridewindtactics.com, and it's a PRIDWEN. It kind of spelled a little weird. It's actually named after King Arthur's shield. King Arthur carried Excalibur. He also carried the shield called Pridewind. So that's why we went after that, and we wanted to do more of the shielding your community. It's not more of we didn't want to do the sword or something like that, you know. So if you go to pridewindtactics.com, you can see we post blogs daily, you know, things, everything that we can just try to think of, just range etiquette to, you know, how to properly clear a firearm, you know,
right.
Just like we have it in the words, we have it in the videos, and we want to show you how to do this stuff, you know. So
we'll link it in the description. So
awesome.
If you're interested in it, it'll be, just scroll down in the description wherever you're listening to this at, and it'll be there. So definitely give it a visit. And ever since I've known Andrew and known, like, Andrew and I have been in this industry for years. We actually both almost started our own company back in the day. But then, you know, life happens, and he ended up moving, and I moved down here, and, you know, Dynamic Defense Solutions became a thing. And then you started getting into your businesses, and then Pride Wind Tactics. But you've always been passionate about, like, anytime we talk, you've always been passionate about your community. It's about, like, you've always said, like, you know, for me, it's not necessarily about, like, the ex-military guy or the cop or whatever. It's about the mom, the single mom.
Yeah,
it's about
absolutely.
the you know, the kid that just turned 18. He's on his own, or he or she's on his own. You know,
what to do when you're 21. You
know,
we have Facebook pages, and we're on groups, and we literally take, your birthday's 21. All right, cool. This is what you need to do now. Like, get this knocked out of the way right now, you know, so that you can go through your life before, you know, and not have to worry about this.
Yeah.
You can have what your LTC, you can understand what, you know, all of this stuff is now. That way you don't have to catch up, you know.
Yeah.
And that's what our big focus is on.
And I think you'll find that, what?
I don't know.
Okay. I think you'll find that the sooner you get into this, the sooner you start kind of diving into this lifestyle and this mentality, the more your opinion's going to broaden, and the more you're going to start to notice when it comes to, like, the bigger picture, you know, active shootings, mass murdering, all that stuff. You're going to start to, the sooner you start getting into this stuff, the more you're going to be able to do, I think, for your community. And you're going to start to have educated opinions on this stuff. You're going to start to be able to look at it from a practical point of view and be like, dude, like, what?
Yeah, and that actually reminds me of this last trauma response training we just did.
Yeah.
One of our students made a comment at the end of the class, and you might be able to remember how it was phrased a little better than me, but I'm just going to, you know, try to
paraphrase it.
Yeah, paraphrase it. But basically he said, you know, going into the class, some of the injuries and stuff we were dealing with in the first day, he said it was very intimidating. It was like, man, it's hard to look at some of the stuff that we were going over. But he said by the second day, he said having an understanding on how to fix those injuries made it more bearable to like look at the injuries because he understood he could help. Mm-hmm. So having the training and the ability to, know how to help, whether that's trauma or firearms, you're going to be able to have you're going to be able to grasp the situation better if you actually have trained for that situation.
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty cool that he made that comment at the end of the class. Like, man, it was way less intimidating. And now I feel like if I were to come up on some of those injuries, I would actually know what to do, and it would be less like, oh, that looks disgusting, to, hey, I actually know how to work. Like, I know how to fix this.
Yep.
So
it's the same thing, just having that little bit of guidance, education, knowledge, and then confidence to deal with things is so important. It takes you from being a deer in the headlights to, actually knowing what's going on and being able to make decisions on the fly in the moment, and, it doesn't take a lot. You don't have to be some Navy SEAL Special Forces guru guy to
put on a sucking chest wound, like,
or to, like that woman in West Virginia, or stop a threat, It came down to, obviously she was carrying a gun, so she had some training and she had a little bit of knowledge. Who knows how much it was, but she deployed that firearm and neutralized that threat and saved lives. And it's as simple as that. So,
and there's been countless times that it's happened, but it gets overshadowed by the negativity of what's going on in the world, it seems like. So
that, and it doesn't, negativity does sell. There's that. But I truly believe, and it's important to be a critical thinker, and it's important to understand what you're up against. But I truly believe that, the powers that be do not want you to be self-reliant. They don't want you to be self-sufficient. They want you to be dependent. They want you to be dependent on them and ask them for, help constantly. They're pushing for dependence. We know what's best for you. We are going to make laws and regulations to put you in place. You just follow toe to toe what you need to do. They don't want critical thinking. Yeah. They don't want self-reliance. They don't want people having personal responsibility. It's something to be aware of. But yeah, I mean, I think with that we'll close her out. It's kind of a heavy topic. It's really sad that this stuff just happened. Like I said before, keep them in your prayers. That's a big thing that I think that I kind of want to end on is people need Jesus. And no matter what your religious beliefs are, those are mine. So I think people need love and compassion, and they need more than just material possessions and all these things. We need to stand alongside each other and help each other. And I think one of the ultimate forms of selflessness and compassion is being willing to put yourself on the line to protect others. And I think it's a massive part of kind of what we all do,
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you, Andrew, for coming on.
Man, I loved it. Loved being. I can't wait till next time.
Yeah, he'll probably be on at least one more, I think. Okay. So we'll see. Oh, okay. So he's here for a little while, so we're gonna
take advantage of
having the Mr. Register here to help us hold it down.
Awesome. So. Well, we'll catch you guys next time.